Make better money choices. Choose a bank that takes your money seriously. Business Watch is brought to you by Nedbank.
Welcome to Nedbank Business Watch. It's a Wednesday and we love to host you on this very important program. A very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for choosing us again this afternoon. I have two conversations on the line for you today. The first one is the drive to strengthen national quality standards through ISWASA's latest reforms. And the second one is the latest, as well as the state of the economy as private sector credit, banking liquidity, as well as money supply continue to expand and concerns over foreign reserves. Both these conversations separate, one with the ISWASA COO and with the other one with Sanelis Bia, our economist. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon once again. Thank you for choosing us this afternoon. The purpose of the Nedbank Corporate and Business Banking is to do good for business, and part of that means supporting businesses from the ground until they grow. Today we replay you a conversation I had with Sibusiso Gula from Nedbank on franchise business banking. He talked about the benefits of partnering with Nedbank for franchise banking and the financial services provided by the bank, such as property loans or start-up loans. Then later, Toba from Nedbank, Treasury Dealer at Nedbank, will give us the latest on financial markets today. But first, our business news.
Digital helps you make cross-border payments. Human gives you global specialists. Digital allows you to apply for a loan anytime, anywhere. Human connects you to credit experts. Digital puts you in control of your money, while Human connects you to wealth advisors. Digital allows you to freeze, unfreeze, cancel, and reorder your card. Human gives you that personal touch. Digital when you want it. Human when you need it. Get the complete private banking experience with Nedbank Private Clients.
Welcome back. Thank you for tuning in. And now for our business news.
Our first story coming in from Eswatini that has leapt forward in its industrialization drive with the official commissioning of the Eswatini Metal Foundry. That is the country's first large-scale metal facility situated in Sitfogotwo. It is a project by one of the companies that made an investment pledge at the 2025 Eswatini Investment Conference. Now, this project, worth over 700 million emalangeni, is a breakthrough of the kingdom's efforts to build a value-adding economy and is expected to create a minimum of 500 jobs.
The multi-phase industrial project will process scrap steel, aluminium, copper, used batteries and tires into reusable industrial materials. Once processed, the manufacturing inputs will be exported via rail to global markets such as Japan, where aluminium is in demand for automobiles. Matthew Sprague, CEO of the Eswatini Metal Foundry, unpacked the project as it sits on 15 hectares of land.
We'll be taking scrap metal and melting it into secondary products. And we are also looking at recycling tires. So it's called a tire pyrolysis plant, which will basically takes tires, it shreds it up, and we convert the rubber into an oil, which basically burns in the foundries as an energy source. Once the completion is set, the first initial phase is complete, then we'll look at other lines of production, so manufacturing something in the long term. I'll use one example. We could put a rolling mill in, for example, to take steel billets and then manufacture rebar for construction.
The investment aligns with Eswatini's 2023 to 2033 industrial policy, setting out a national vision of diversifying into high-value added manufacturing, creating decent jobs and promoting green industrialization through circular economy and waste management initiatives. The Minister for Commerce, Honorable Khumalo, says this sends a strong signal to investors that Eswatini is expanding its industrial capacity.
We have never had a project like this. It's also exciting for the community around Stogoto, all the people that live in Stogoto, live in neighboring communities, whether it's Kubuta, whether it's Nkwene, whether it is Kundwini. They will find jobs here because at some point, at full strength, they will employ 500 Maswati after construction, and during construction, there will be many Maswati employed as well. We're excited then that they are going to invest up to 750 million emalangeni in this particular project at this particular site. We are an export-driven economy, but we don't like exporting raw things. We want to process them, and this is exactly how this company has responded to that call to say, let us do beneficiation in country so that we add value and then bring foreign currency into Eswatini, and this is one of the things that excites us with this particular project.
The first phase of the foundry is to be completed in May of 2027, and the entire project could take up to 5 years to complete. This could reduce dependence on imported metals, strengthen local supply chains, and support the development of downstream industries such as fabrication, construction materials, and machinery components. Reporting, Nautilus Tole from Gosenzinisa, Stogoto.
Credit extended to the private sector has reached a record 23.2 billion emalangeni, driven mainly by business borrowing in sectors such as manufacturing, construction, tourism, and agriculture. This is contained in the Central Bank of Eswatini's statistical report for March-April 2026, noting that broad money supply also expanded to 27.8 billion emalangeni, while domestic liquid assets in the banking industry rose sharply to 10.5 billion emalangeni. At the same time, the country's gross official reserves recorded a slight recovery in April following the inflow of Southern African Customs Union SACU revenue, pushing import over to 2.3 months.
The central bank adds that the monthly growth was entirely driven by credit extended to businesses, which expanded by 2.6% during the month and 10.1% year-on-year to reach a new peak of 12.7 billion emalangeni. Business credit now accounts for more than half of total private sector credit in the economy. Large enterprises, which account for 66.3% of total business credit, saw borrowing increase by 1.9% to 8.4 billion emalangeni. At the same time, small and medium enterprises, which account for the remaining 33.7%, registered faster growth of 4.2% to 4.3 billion emalangeni. In contrast, credit extended to other domestic sectors contracted by 9.2% month-on-month and 5.2% year-on-year to close at 1 billion emalangeni. This decline was mainly caused by reduced credit to public enterprises and local government. Credit to public enterprises fell sharply by 20.2% to 400 million emalangeni, while credit to local government declined by 2.1% to 100 million emalangeni. Within household credit, housing loans declined by 2% to 4.2 billion emalangeni, suggesting slower activity in property borrowing. However, motor vehicle loans increased by 1% to 1.5 billion emalangeni, while other personal and unsecured loans grew by 1.3% to 3.8 billion emalangeni. The report further shows that net claims on government fell by 6.6% month-on-month and 15.9% year-on-year to 1.9 billion emalangeni. This improvement was largely driven by an increase in government deposits, which grew by 5.3% to 6.9 billion emalangeni. In terms of money supply, broad money expanded by 3% during the month and 17.1% year-on-year to reach 27.8 billion emalangeni. This is an increase of more than 4 billion emalangeni compared to the 23.7 billion emalangeni recorded in March of 2025. The central bank also reports that domestic liquid assets rose by 14.2% month-on-month and 41.8% year-on-year to reach 10.5 billion emalangeni in March of 2026. The report states that the growth in liquidity was driven mainly by higher cash holdings and larger balances held by commercial banks with the Central Bank of Eswatini. As a result, the liquidity ratio increased from 34.5% in February to 38.4% in March of 2026. Total deposits in the banking industry also continued to grow, rising to 29.4 billion emalangeni in March of 2026 compared to 28.8 billion emalangeni in February and 24.7 billion emalangeni in March of 2025. At the same time, loans and advances stood at 22.9 billion emalangeni, while government securities held by banks increased to 5.6 billion emalangeni. On the external front, provisional gross official reserves stood at 10.2 billion emalangeni at the end of April 2026. This represents a month-on-month increase of 5.3%, although reserves were still 2.7% lower than the levels recorded during the same period last year. The central bank attributes the improvement in reserves to the quarterly inflow of SACU revenue received during the first week of April 2026. As a result, the country's import cover improved slightly from 2.2 months in March to 2.3 months in April. The report also shows that net foreign assets stood at 7.6 billion emalangeni, while the central bank's foreign assets increased to 11.3 billion emalangeni. Reporting, Notilis Tole, Vumingo Sinzinisa, Mbabane.
That marks the end of business news. Thank you for staying with us. It's 11 minutes after 2. This is Nedbank Business Watch.
The latest statistical release by the Central Bank of Eswatini in conversation with our economist, Sanele Sbia. The Central Bank of Eswatini's statistical release for the months March and April 2026 is showing stronger credit growth, and it's showing improved banking liquidity as well as expanding money supply and highlighting concerns about the country's foreign reserves and import cover. The report indicates that credit extended to the private sector has reached 23.2 billion emalangeni, and that is after growing by 0.9% during the month of March and 8.1% year-on-year. The report also shows that SMEs registered stronger growth in borrowing than large companies, with the SME credit rising by 4.2% to 4.3 billion emalangeni in the same vein. Also, it is showing that household credit remains stable at 9.5 billion emalangeni, although housing loans declined by 2% to 4.2 billion emalangeni, while personal loans continues to increase. Now, to unpack these numbers and all these figures, from credit growth to broad money and government's improved financial position with the banking sector, Sanele Sbia, our economist, joins us now. Maybe, Sanele, let's start with the headline figure. Good afternoon, first and foremost. Thank you so much for joining us on the program, per usual. We are seeing here that headline figure, private sector credit has now reached a record of 23.2 billion emalangeni. What does this tell us about the confidence and activity within the economy right now?
Thank you, Mr. Ngumalo. A good afternoon to you and also a good afternoon to the viewers. So when we look at these numbers, Mr. Ngumalo, one thing we have to be cognizant of is the drivers. And we can see that the drivers are largely, they're largely construction, which really just shows that we're seeing a bit of upbeat movement within the construction sector being driven by the mega projects that the country is investing in. So then it is not surprising to see that the construction industry is seen to be on the increase. So now what this says is a bit of domestic stability, and we can see that these mega construction projects really are pushing business forward, and they're really becoming a catalyst for growth within the kingdom, and that is quite commendable, and it does show that we are going to reach our target of, ensuring that the growth overall stays above 5% well into 2026, beginning to plateau and decline in 2027. So when one looks at these figures, it does show that the economy is on a good footing.
Mr. Speaker, we don't have a lot of time today, so I just want to allow you to just highlight everything that is notable from this release in 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Ngumalo. So number one would be the growth of credit. And then secondly, when you look at the credit being, given to the household sector, it does show that it is up. It fell by 9.2% in terms of other deposits. So now in unsecured loans grew by 1.0 and 1.3%. So it does show that households are still finding this current interest rate environment quite plausible for them to borrow. And then the issue around the reserves, we can see that import cover has actually improved slightly to 2.3 months. Just a bit ways away from the 3 months import cover, which we need to sustain our peg with the South African rand. So we do need to look into that as a country and ensure that we improve our foreign exchange reserves. And then also the claims on the government, signaling that we've had quite a number of inflows, which include, amongst others, the SACCO receipts. And now that is quite a good number there. So showing that the risk of crowding out private sector investment is relatively low if we are seeing a relatively lower number of claims in terms of government to the private sector. Thank you, Mr. Nguman.
Thank you. Very brief and incisive indeed. We go for a net break. Franchise financing, our recap with Nedbank, a conversation you heard before. We are just bringing you that conversation again. Franchise financing after the break. Stay with us.
All right, so welcome back. It's Nedbank Business Watch. Thank you for staying with us. Today we're joined by Manager Retail Services from Nedbank, Sibusiso Gwile. We're discussing Nedbank franchise financing. This is a particular for people that have an interest in franchising business. A very good afternoon and welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us. What is Nedbank franchise financing, Mr. Gwile?
I think maybe just to greet all the viewers out there, our customers and potential customers into this session. Nedbank has been in the franchise space for quite a long time, actually. You're speaking to so many years of a craft that we have always sharpened over the years up to this point now, when we have a very solid package for our customers in terms of franchise financing. So with franchise financing, we are basically looking at financing businesses that are franchised, in terms of you having to use a name that is patented by another corporate company, based whether in Swaziland or internationally or in South Africa, wherever it is, but they've given you the rights to be able to use that name to run your business here. Obviously, it comes with certain terms and conditions, obviously, because you use their name. So they're very careful to ensure that you do not actually miss out on certain things. So there are those standards that you have to follow. So we are saying as a bank is that it is one area, it is because it is still a niche market, to be honest with you, but it is, and for us, it is one area that we really are enjoying to play in. It's a space that we are enjoying to play in, and we have seen quite significant growth over the years. But Nedbank franchise is the way to go.
Yeah, I think the most important question is who gets to qualify to get financing from Nedbank. I mean, we have first-time business owners that want to try franchise. We have those that want to revamp. We have others that want to add more stores. Who qualifies to get financing?
To a certain extent, you've already responded to my questions, but to your question. But the first thing that you have to ask yourself is, who is the person that is applying for that services, you know? So you want to have a situation where you understand that even before doing anything, you know. You talked about revamp, startups, because for startups we can do that, because what we have in terms of stats, what we know, and it is there in every research that has been done over the years, is that at least 90% of franchise businesses, they do succeed. So who doesn't want to play in that space? So even if you come and you are new in that space, we want to look into that business. And one of the main things is the fact that the owner of the name, the owner of the patent name, will want to train you until you are quite conversant on that, on the way of the operation of the company. So just to make sure that their name is not dragged down, you know, by your poor performance. So we like that we are not only supporting you, but also there is a mother behind that will be actually cracking the whip on you as well to say, look, these are our standards. Please try to make sure that you don't deviate from our standards. So for us, we are comfortable in that sense, because then there is guidance into the whole thing, and which is why most franchises, again, are successful.
Right. So is it not risky for the bank to finance someone who's a startup, first-time business owner that wants to open up a franchise? What do you look into with that person? Because it's quite different compared to this one that has many shops already.
To tell you the truth, risk is in every situation that we may find ourselves in. Risk is in someone who's already there running a franchise. Risk is already on someone that has been running a franchise for the past 20 years. It is still risk, but the risks are different, you know. But now, with Nedbank franchising, we have got this basket that we have, which has got 2 items in it that which we are reliant on. The first one is the franchise credit policy, and the second one is the customer value proposition on franchising. Now, they go hand in hand. obviously the customer value proposition will actually speak to who do we want in terms of our appetite. Is it a franchise name that we are comfortable with? Is it a franchise name that that is well known? And to what extent we can actually finance that? And the person behind it as well is very key. We call them a jockey, you know.
Okay.
Because now, in the literal sense, you're talking about a jockey, someone riding a horse. So obviously your business is your horse. So that is why we kind of call you a jockey in that space.
Okay.
So now we are saying, who are you? Then we'll be able to combine all these ethics and key pointers that will actually help us to come out with the right decision to make, you know, based on our franchise credit policy and our customer value proposition on franchising.
So I suppose you do the track records, the track record of that customer that wants financing, and also what else do you consider? Do you consider things such as research? Because I suppose they should have done their research before coming to you, research about that business or store or retail, and also permission, which is very important, permission from the store owner. Do you look into things like that? What documents are required for that particular person to bring with when coming to Nedbank?
I think even before we get to a point where we are asking what documents should somebody bring, we have to admit that the pre-qualifications of an individual who has come to apply for financing, especially for franchise financing, must be somebody. In fact, this also applies to even in general, somebody who wants to do something. But what we are saying is the person that wants to apply for franchise financing must have done their own homework. You know, the bank will not actually do what they're supposed to do in terms of, you know, trying to do a bit of due diligence for themselves. They have to do it for themselves. Then we've got our own due diligence that we have to do on ourselves, within ourselves, to say, is it something that is we can take it further in terms of application and what have you, or it's a non-starter, because sometimes you find that the proposals are presented but they are not actually ticking all the boxes. Nevertheless, we can finance literally almost everybody. New, you want to do a revamp, you want to do additional stores, whichever situation that you want to, you find yourself in, we are in there on the sideline to try and finance that. But the two items that are guiding us, the credit policy, franchise credit policy, and the CVP, which is the customer value proposition on franchising, are very key in seeing us succeed, because we are saying we don't finance franchising like everybody else. We've got our own special way. I'm not going to reveal a lot of that special way here because we're on air, because we don't know who's listening. At the end of the day, we've got a much better sequence and a much better way of financing franchising in the country. That is why we are always referred as a franchise bank, because we probably bank most of the franchising in the country. So it talks to anybody that is listening to say, maybe they need to run to Nedbank.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so do you do 100% financing, or is there a certain percentage that that particular customer should bring to the table?
Yeah, it will depend on so many things there. You know, when we discussed earlier on, I said we also look at the jockey on who you are and all those things. So when I say who you are, we're not talking about behavior. We're not okay, maybe a little bit of behavior. We're not also talking about whether you are an Asian or a European. No. Who you are in terms of your financial strength, yourself. your experiences, that you have, So the issue of contributions and all that, whether we finance at 100%, it depends on that. Other than who you are, have you been in the franchise space? What are you currently doing? And what you are doing, is it doing well? And all those things. So they just come into the frame, and we will be able then to make a decision on that. But we do grow a lot of, franchisees who are already in the game and they want to grow. We can actually give them up to 100%, And you talk about 100%, it's possible in so many other ways, depending on the strength of that transaction. Then if we are comfortable in terms of maybe cash flows and all those stuff, that is needed information that would have been submitted, will actually speak to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so how long do I have to be with the Nedbank in order to qualify for the franchise financing? Or I can just decide tomorrow that, no, I want to go with Nedbank and apply for the franchise financing?
The good thing is, when you talk about franchise, we are saying, as we've said before, 90% of franchises succeed, whether you're in Swaziland or you're in South Africa. In fact, even in the US. And it is stats that is very critical for us. So when you have an idea of which franchise you want, you just can't come and approach Nedbank, whether you bank with Nedbank or you don't bank with Nedbank. But for us, it's all about looking at the proposition that we would have presented and find that element of us being interested in. So we are always trying to find a way to make the deal. That's what I can say. Whether you are new or you are not new, we're always trying to find a way to actually have a deal on that, because we know that it has got a 90% chance of success.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does Nedbank offer advice on how to go about accessing information, maybe on that particular store, or you just want to get the documents required from that customer and just process the application?
We can give advice in so many ways, but you must have made up your mind to say, which kind of franchise do you want to do, when you come to us? Then we can actually then guide you on that, on how best you can actually approach that. But obviously, a lot of the work, you have to do it
yourself.
We can only guide you to say, go to this, go do this, like this, speak to this one, and other things that may actually help you to actually get to a point where you are able to put together your business plan, because your business plan will also tell us that you have actually reasoned this thing through, and you know what you're talking about, and you have spoken to name the name or the franchise that you so want to do.
Okay, just lastly, Mr. Kwele, before I let you go, for more details, or if they want to apply for the franchise financing, who do they contact at Nedbank, or they go to one of the branches? Who do they contact?
Yeah. They can, we've got the number. My number is there, that can be available to everybody that wants to start a franchise. I don't know if I'm going to share it now or share it at a later stage.
You can share it now.
Yeah. Okay. So my number is 7602-8136. They can call me directly. Okay. Or for any further information, they can just visit any of our branches. They can actually get a bit of the information, and they can always be referred to me so that we are able to find a way to help that client.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Gula. That was Manager Retail Services at Nedbank, Sibusiso Gula. And if you're interested and want to find out more on Nedbank's franchise financing, do not hesitate to contact him on his number. Thank you for staying with us. We'll take a break. We'll be back shortly.
All right, welcome back. The Eswatini Standards Authority, you know it as ISWASA, has recently presented its 2024 and 2025 progress report to the Minister of Commerce, Industry and Trade, Honorable Mangoba Khumalo. That is among the highlights that he highlighted the development and gazetting of 43 new national standards for the year 2025-2026. It covers sectors such as food and agriculture. It covers chemicals and environmental management, among others. And to further align Eswatini with regional and international best practices, ISWASA has also harmonized an additional 33 standards that are adopted from standardization bodies, including the African Organization for Standardization. Once gazetted, of course, these will bring Eswatini's total number of national standards to 392. We are now joined by ISWASA's Chief Operations Officer, Philip Mdawe, for a discussion on the importance of the new and harmonized national standards, as well as how these efforts are helping to build a culture of quality and competitiveness in Eswatini. Thank you for your time, Mr. Philip. Good afternoon and welcome to the program. Maybe let's start with the big picture here. Just why should the average Emaswati care about national standards?
Good afternoon to you and afternoon to all viewers. Maybe to begin with, let me first explain who is SWASA. SWASA is the national standards body for Eswatini, established under the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Trade. Our main mandate is to facilitate trade. We do that through the provision of standards. Those standards mainly are adopted from the international community so that we do not reinvent the wheel. In other words, we go for the best international practice out there. Why should Emaswati use EMA standards? There are so many benefits associated with EMA standards, especially in trade. A lot of Emaswati, MSMEs, and even large enterprises are now vying for export. That is, they want to send their products to various markets around the world. That includes the European Union. It includes markets such as AGOA, to name a few, and also not to forget the African Free Continental Trade Area, which is opening up. So these standards will help to ensure that whatsoever you produce or whatsoever service you provide is of quality standard. It's safe for human consumption, does not affect the environment. So if you want to ensure that your products do reach those markets, you must make sure that you come to SWASA, you access the standard, you get certification. Once you are certified, then access to most of this market will be granted. Yeah.
You have developed as well as gazetted 43 new standards, and that is national standards for the year 2025 and the year 2026. I want to understand how these standards affect everyday life, but maybe going forward with that is why these areas in particular, these sectors in particular, particularly you speak of food, you speak of agriculture, as well as chemicals and environmental management.
Thank you once again. Our standards development process prioritizes standards according to the needs of the nation. For example, 9 standards which are to assist MSMEs through the Ingelo certification scheme, which is a scheme which was launched recently by the Minister of Commerce, Industry and Trade, targeting produce which is produced by local indigenous Eswatini. I will make a few examples. We've got Eswatini who are now producing coffee, roasted coffee, and we've developed a standard for roasted coffee beans. We've got Eswatini who are now producing fabric softener, also liquid body soap, fruit drinks, and so on. All these products need to be safe for consumption by Eswatini and as well as the international community if we intend those products to reach the international community. So SWASA will always prioritize per work program, which is per year we've got 2 work programs. Eswatini are allowed to propose standard. Anyone can propose a standard, so long it is economically viable to produce that standard. It makes socio-economic
Of course, we often hear about the word standards. We normally hear about that word in technical spaces, and our conversation now, I do not want it to become technical, for lack of a better term. So I want you to break it down for us. What exactly makes a product or a standard, or a service rather, standard compliant? If you will check, I think you have mistakenly muted your device.
Pardon me? Yes, a standard is a document which specified requirements for a project. It could be quality requirement. It could be management system requirement. So what we do as SWASA, we adopt these international standards from the international community and we gazette them as a national standard. Once these standards have been gazetted, then whosoever is producing is expected to access these standards and then implement the standards according to the requirements which are stipulated. As SWASA will then come and check if the implementation does comply to what is written in the standard. I will make an example. The standard will require that any product must be tested, and it must be tested for A, B, and C. Okay? It will name those parameters. Then SWASA will assist you with the testing and compliance to the standard. Once you achieve that, we give you a certificate of conformity. That particular certificate will help you access international markets. Thank you.
All right, and of course, we have to talk about this one concern that a lot of businesses sometimes raise, and that is that standards can feel expensive or rather difficult to implement, for lack of a better term. Just how is SWASA balancing regulation with supporting business growth, especially when we talk about small and medium enterprises?
Thank you once again. A lot of concern have come to SWASA concerning the expensive nature of implementing standards. Yes, I agree, they are expensive. But what SWASA has done, we've come with a number of initiatives through the Minister of Commerce, Industry and Trade, our parent ministry. Recently, the Minister of Commerce, Industry and Trade launched the Ingelo certification scheme. The Ingelo certification scheme is a scheme which is meant to assist MSMEs, that is medium, micro, small, medium enterprises, so that they will be able to get certification. Recently, in the first phase of the project, we identified 20 MSMEs, and we are currently in the process of assisting them to implement the standards as well as get the certification. I can mention that as we speak, we have audited 3 MSMEs, and if all goes accordingly, they will be getting their certification very, very soon. So for MSMEs, the Ingelo certification scheme is government sponsored. It comes at a very, very cheap cost for them. Once they graduate from the MSME scheme, then they will be taken to the main certification schemes where they will be able to access international market as well. Thank you.
Food standards, because they remain one of the most important and pertinent conversations around standards. And that is not just a Eswatini conversation, that is a global conversation. Talk to me about how, or whether, are there any new specific regulations or standards that are aimed at protecting consumers, particularly in terms of improving confidence in locally produced goods?
Thank you once again. Almost in every work program, we've got new standard, and the majority or the bulk of the standard are in food and agriculture. SWASA is working on work program 17 as we speak, where a number of these standards, for example, standards on fruit drinks is one of the standards we will be producing in this particular work program. We've got a standard on, I did mention a standard on roasted coffee beans, which are some of the standards which will help MSMEs who are producing coffee in the country. These standards are meant to assist the local MSMEs in ensuring that whatsoever they produce, it's safe for the public at large. The food they produce is produced in areas which comply to standards. Recently, under the Ingelo certification scheme, we developed a standard for cottage production. After noting that most MSMEs who are in a food handling business are producing in their kitchens, in their garages, according to standard, that is not supposed to be so. So we produced a standard to look specifically at the cottages, the hygiene practices in the cottages, and so on. Yeah, so SWASA is working on standards to assist MSMEs ensure that consumers are protected. Thank you.
How important is public awareness, Mr. Philip, in terms of, building what you call a quality or a culture of quality, particularly in Eswatini?
Yeah. Public awareness is very, very important. And I would say it's one of the areas as SWASA who are working on so that people around the country will be aware that for all commodities, there are standards. For all services, there are standards which have been produced by SWASA. These particular standards are supposed to be accessed by the public, not only the producers, but the public as well, so that they will be aware of what is stipulated in those standards. Then when we come to certify, we certify against what is written. During the standards development process, we allow a 2-month period for the public to comment on the standards. That is, the public will read the standard, then they will send the comments to SWASA, and those comments are incorporated in the standard. So public awareness is very, very important. Everyone needs to be aware of the standards. Thank you.
Mr. Philip, thank you for your time. But perhaps before I let you go, maybe let's talk about the number of national standards that continues to grow to now nearly 400. What does success look like for Eswasa over the next few years? What tangible changes should Eswatini expect to see?
Over the next few years, we will continue developing standards. Per year, we develop around 40 standards, so we expect the number to grow as we progress. Not only standards, but the certification, because once we've developed the standard, we need to go and certify through auditing the standards and ensure that whatsoever is produced out there complies to the standard. So as a SWASA, we're not only working on developing the standard, but we are working on making sure that the MSMEs and the large industries are aware of the standard and are implementing the standard, are audited. With that, let me also talk to one other initiative which we have embarked on as a SWASA, which is the ARSO dual marking system. ARSO is the African Regional Organization for Standardization, an organization we subscribe to as Eswatini. Its main task is to ensure that the AFCA agreement is implemented through the provision of standards. So we as Eswasa are working with ARSO to ensure that Eswatini do comply to the ARSO standards. The ARSO standards have also been adopted as Eswatini standards. Through that, we'll be giving them a dual mark. The dual mark will have the Eswasa mark together with the ARSO mark, and that will ensure that the produce from Eswatini does reach the continent at large. Thank you.
Mr. Philip, thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day. We have our show continuing after the break. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. This is our final segment, the market analysis with Toba from Nedbank. A very good afternoon, Toba. Thank you for coming through this afternoon. What's the latest on the world of markets today?
Thank you, Lulu, and good afternoon to you and our viewers. So today, markets and investors are watching closely the U.S. President's trip to China. He has just landed this afternoon in China. So it's a two-day summit. So it's Thursday and Friday, where he's going to be having an array of discussions with China. It is the first time in about a decade a U.S. president goes to China. So, you know, a lot of expectations, but nothing explosive that's expected in the market.
Yeah, all right. Yeah. So what's happening with the numbers today? Let's start off by looking at commodities this afternoon.
All right, so when we look at commodities, gold has lost a bit of value. So this is at the back of U.S. inflation numbers that came out yesterday, which showed that inflation went up in the U.S. by 0.9%. This is mainly due to energy-related commodities or goods. So then that means that the reserve, the Federal Reserve is likely going to keep rates higher for longer because of the high inflation that is being chucked out. There is an expectation of a rate hike in December, but the odds there in the market are around 25-30%, but they have gone up after the print that we saw yesterday. So that has then made other investment options like your bonds, you know, gain a bit of favor in the market, and investors are then pulling away from gold and looking at more interest yielding instruments at the back of the expectation of higher rates for longer. Mm-hmm. And then when we look at oil, oil is up. At the back of what is happening in the Middle East, at the back of the agreement of a ceasefire, not materializing, and actually, seems to be phasing away, with Iran saying, putting a number of demands on the table, like reputations, some of their frozen assets being given back, and America saying that that's a ridiculous demand, and all of that. So that uncertainty, continues in the market. We saw the Energy Agency reporting that demand for oil is likely going to be higher than the output, especially towards the end of the year. So that has sort of then increased the price of oil at the back of the anticipated decline in stockpiles and supply.
All right, so moving along, looking at equities this afternoon, what's happening there?
Right, equities are sort of muted in terms of the volatility. You can see that 0.16 down for the S&P 500, 0.04% for the FTSE. It's at the back of the inflation number that came out yesterday, but we are expecting, or we are seeing, especially now with the US market opening at 2 p.m. our time, we've seen an uptick in the price of the S&P 500. Excuse me. And then the FTSE, on the other hand, in addition to the global mayhem that we continue to see, investors there are also worried about the political environment and uncertainty with the Prime Minister, sort of his future not being certain at the moment, with the resignation of ministers, and some are, projecting that he's likely going to resign or be forced to step down as a result of that.
Okay, so moving on lastly to currencies this afternoon, how's the Lilangeni trading against the US dollar?
So against the dollar, the Lilangeni is 0.44% up. Well, it's actually trading in the green against all the major currencies, but on a very small scale. You can see the margins of change are quite minimal. It's not really anything in particular that's happening, especially in South Africa. It's mostly the rand taking cues from the global economy. Yes, there is political issues in South Africa, especially with the Pala report coming out, or rather the issue around that and the president saying that he's not going to step down, but that has not really moved the needle in terms of the performance of the rand, but it's been rather international focus and the uncertainty that comes with the war that we continue to see in between the US and Iran.
All right. Yes. Thank you, Toba, for today's analysis. This was our final segment. There you go with figures today. That's all we had for you on Nedbank Business Watch today. For more information or to learn more about Nedbank franchising, do visit any of the Nedbank branches countrywide for more details. We'll see you next week, Wednesday. Have a lovely day.
Digital helps you make cross-border payments. Human gives you global specialists. Digital allows you to apply for a loan anytime, anywhere. Human connects you to credit experts. Digital puts you in control of your money, while Human connects you to wealth advisors. Digital allows you to freeze, unfreeze, cancel, and reorder your card. Human gives you that personal touch. Digital when you want it. Human when you need it. Get the complete private banking experience with Nedbank Private Clients.
Make better money choices. Choose a bank that takes your money seriously. Business Watch was brought to you by Nedbank.